For centuries, the world believed a lie so big, so complete, that it shaped how we see an entire continent. A lie that erased kingdoms, silenced voices, and buried the truth beneath layers of false stories and twisted facts. This is the story of ancient Africa. Not the Africa you learned about in school. Not the Africa of empty deserts and simple villages. This is the Africa that built empires when Europe lived in darkness. The Africa that created wonders while the rest of the world was still learning to read and write. The truth was hidden. The evidence was ignored. The facts were changed to fit a story that made some people feel better about themselves. But the truth cannot stay buried forever. Let us begin. The first lie. Africa had no great civilizations. Picture a classroom. Children sit at wooden desks. A teacher stands at the front, pointing to a map. She speaks of Rome. She speaks of Greece. She speaks of China and Mesopotamia, the great civilizations of the ancient world. Africa is barely mentioned. Maybe Egypt gets a few words, but the rest of the continent? Nothing. Empty, silent, as if millions of people lived there for thousands of years and built nothing at all. This is the first myth, the biggest lie, the one that made all the other lies possible. The truth is different. The truth is remarkable. In the heart of West Africa, an empire rose that would make European kings weep with envy. The Mali Empire. It stretched across land larger than Western Europe. Its cities gleamed with gold. Its universities taught students from across the known world. In the year 1324, a king named Mansa Musa made a pilgrimage to Mecca. He traveled with 60,000 men. He carried so much gold that when he passed through Egypt, he gave away so much wealth that he crashed their economy for 12 years. 12 years. One man had so much gold that he accidentally destroyed the value of money in an entire country. This was not a myth. This was not a legend. This happened. It was recorded by Arab historians, by Egyptian scholars, by witnesses who saw it with their own eyes. But you probably never learned about it in school. Further south, in the land we now call Zimbabwe, stone towers rose toward the sky. Great Zimbabwe. Massive walls built without mortar, without cement. Stones cut so perfectly they fit together like puzzle pieces. These walls still stand today. They have stood for over 1,000 years. When European explorers first saw these ruins, they could not believe Africans built them. They invented wild stories. They said it must have been the Phoenicians or the Arabs or some lost white civilization. Anyone but the African people who actually lived there. The evidence said otherwise. The pottery was African. The tools were African. The art was African. The people who built Great Zimbabwe were the ancestors of the Shona people who still live in that region today. But the myth continued, because admitting the truth meant admitting that Africans were capable of greatness, and that truth was too dangerous for some people to accept. The second lie. Africans never had writing systems. They said Africans had no history because they had no writing. They said nothing was written down. Everything was just stories passed from mouth to mouth, changing and twisting with each telling. Another lie. In the highlands of Ethiopia, an ancient script still lives. Ge'ez, one of the oldest alphabets in the world. It emerged over 2,000 years ago. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still uses it today. Religious texts, historical records, poetry, philosophy, all written in an African script that predates most European writing systems. In West Africa, the Vai people created their own writing system in the 1800s, not borrowed from Europe, not copied from Arabia, created from nothing. A man named Momolu Duwalu Bukele had a dream, and from that dream he designed an entire alphabet. Within months, it spread across the region. People were reading and writing in their own script. The Nsibidi script of southeastern Nigeria is even older. Symbols carved into wood, painted on walls, woven into cloth. A complex system of communication that existed long before European ships arrived on African shores. And then there is Egypt, ancient Egypt. The hieroglyphs that covered temple walls and tomb chambers. One of the most sophisticated writing systems ever created. Beautiful, complex, powerful. But here is where the third myth begins.
This might be the strangest myth of all, the most twisted, the most desperate. Egypt is in Africa. It sits on the northeastern corner of the African continent. The Nile River flows through it from the heart of Africa. Egyptian civilization grew from African soil, African water, African sun. But for centuries, scholars tried to separate Egypt from the rest of Africa. They called it a Middle Eastern civilization. They said it was Mediterranean. They did everything possible to avoid calling it what it obviously was, African. They painted Egyptian pharaohs with white skin. They gave them European features. They ignored the evidence written by the ancient Greeks themselves. Herodotus, the father of history, visited Egypt and wrote that the Egyptians had dark skin and woolly hair. He said they looked like the Ethiopians. Modern science has settled this debate. DNA studies of ancient Egyptian mummies show genetic links to other African populations. Skull measurements, bone structure, all the evidence points to the same conclusion. Ancient Egyptians were Africans. They were a diverse people, yes. They had contact with other regions, yes. But they were fundamentally an African civilization, built by African people on African land. The pyramids are African monuments. The Sphinx is an African sculpture. The temples of Luxor and Karnak are African architecture. This should not be controversial, but it is, because accepting this truth means accepting that Africans built one of the greatest civilizations in human history. And that truth threatens the myth that Africa was always primitive, always backward, always waiting for outsiders to bring civilization.
The fourth lie. Africans had no advanced technology. They said Africans lived in mud huts. They said African technology was simple, basic, primitive. They were wrong. In the hills of Tanzania, archaeologists found something remarkable: ancient furnaces, blast furnaces for smelting iron.
These furnaces reached temperatures that European smiths would not achieve for another 1,000 years. The people of ancient Tanzania were producing carbon steel in the year 500. Carbon steel, the same material used to make modern tools and weapons. In Benin, metalworkers created bronze sculptures so detailed, so perfect, that when Europeans first saw them, they refused to believe Africans made them. The Benin bronzes. Hundreds of plaques and statues showing kings and warriors and animals. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. The technique was advanced. Some experts say it matched or exceeded anything being produced in Europe at the same time. The Kingdom of Kush, south of Egypt, built over 200 pyramids, more pyramids than Egypt. They developed their own script called Meroitic. They built massive temples and palaces. They fought wars with Rome and won. In the Congo Basin, archaeologists discovered evidence of complex mathematical systems. The Ishango bone, found near the border of modern Uganda and Congo, shows mathematical markings that are over 20,000 years old. Some researchers believe it might be the oldest mathematical tool ever discovered.
African engineers built irrigation systems that turned deserts into farmland. They constructed trade routes that crossed thousands of miles. They navigated by stars and seasons. They built ships that sailed the Indian Ocean, trading with India and China centuries before European explorers left their shores. The technology was there. The innovation was there. The knowledge was there. But the myth said otherwise, and the myth was easier to believe than the truth.
The fifth lie: Africa was isolated and backward until Europeans arrived. This is perhaps the most damaging myth of all. The idea that Africa existed in isolation, cut off from the rest of the world, waiting in darkness until European ships arrived to bring light and civilization. The opposite was true. Africa was the center of the world. Trade routes crisscrossed the continent like veins in a body. Gold from West Africa flowed north across the Sahara to Mediterranean ports. Salt moved south. Ivory traveled east. Copper went west. The Sahara was not a barrier, it was a highway. Caravans of camels carried goods and ideas across the sand. Cities grew rich on this trade. Timbuktu, Gao, Jian. These were not small villages, they were cosmopolitan centers of commerce and learning. On the East Coast, Swahili city-states thrived on Indian Ocean trade. Kilwa, Mombasa, Zanzibar, Mogadishu. Ships from Arabia, Persia, India, and China docked at their ports. Merchants spoke multiple languages. Markets sold goods from 3 continents. Chinese porcelain has been found in ruins along the East African coast. African goods have been found in Chinese archaeological sites. This was not isolation. This was connection. This was globalization before the word existed.
African scholars traveled to study in other lands. Foreign scholars came to study in African universities. The University of Sankore in Timbuktu held one of the largest collections of books in the world during the medieval period. Hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, poetry, philosophy. When European explorers finally reached West Africa in the 1500s, they did not find primitive people waiting to be civilized. They found established kingdoms with complex governments. They found cities larger than most European capitals. They found trade networks more sophisticated than anything in Europe at the time. But this truth was inconvenient. It made the slave trade harder to justify. It made colonization harder to defend. So the truth was buried. The evidence was ignored. The myth was created and spread and taught as fact.
For generations, these myths shaped how the world saw Africa. They shaped how Africans saw themselves. Children grew up learning that their ancestors built nothing, created nothing, contributed nothing to human civilization. They learned that history began when Europeans arrived, that progress came from outside, that their own cultures were primitive and worthless. This was not accidental. This was deliberate. The myths served a purpose. They justified slavery. They justified colonization. They justified the theft of land and resources and dignity. If Africans were primitive, then enslaving them was not a crime, it was a rescue. If Africans had no civilization, then colonizing them was not conquest, it was a gift. If Africans had no history, then erasing their cultures was not destruction, it was improvement. The lies made monsters feel like heroes. But lies cannot stand forever. Truth has a way of surfacing, like bones in eroding soil, like gold in a riverbed, like stars emerging when clouds finally part.
Today, archaeologists dig in African soil and find wonders. Ancient cities buried beneath jungle and sand, tools and weapons that reveal sophisticated technology, art that speaks of complex cultures and deep spiritual lives. Historians study old manuscripts written by African scholars. They read accounts from Arab travelers who visited African kingdoms and wrote of their wealth and power. They examine European records that contradict European myths. Scientists use modern technology to unlock ancient secrets. DNA analysis, carbon dating, satellite imaging that revealed hidden structures beneath the earth. The evidence keeps coming, and it keeps proving the myths wrong. Great Zimbabwe was built by Africans. The iron furnaces of Tanzania were operated by Africans. The universities of Timbuktu were filled with African scholars. The trade networks that connected 3 continents were managed by African merchants. Ancient Egypt was an African civilization. The Nile Valley kingdoms were African powers. The mathematical innovations, the architectural achievements, the artistic masterpieces, all African. This is not about pride. This is about truth. This is about correcting a historical record that was deliberately falsified. This is about giving back to Africa what was stolen, not gold or land, something more valuable, its history, its dignity, its rightful place in the story of human civilization.
Some people ask why this matters. Why dig up the past? Why challenge old stories? Why not just move forward? Because you cannot move forward while carrying lies. Because identity matters. Because knowing where you come from shapes where you can go. When African children learn the truth about their ancestors, something changes. When they learn that their people built empires and universities, that their people created writing systems and advanced technology, that their people were traders and scholars and engineers and artists, something fundamental shifts. Pride replaces shame. Possibility replaces limitation. The future opens up. And it is not just African children who need this truth. The whole world needs it. Because the myths about Africa created myths about race, myths about human potential, myths about who can achieve greatness and who cannot. These myths poisoned everything. They justified centuries of oppression. They created systems of inequality that still exist today. They damaged both the oppressed and the oppressor, because living with lies damages everyone. The truth heals. Not quickly, not easily, but it heals. The story of ancient Africa is not finished. New discoveries happen every year. New evidence emerges. New truths come to light. Beneath the soil of Africa, countless secrets still wait. Cities not yet found, technologies not yet understood, stories not yet told. The pyramids of Sudan stand silent, largely unexplored. The ruins of ancient kingdoms sleep beneath jungle vines. Manuscripts crumble in forgotten libraries, their knowledge fading before anyone can read them. There is so much we still do not know, so much that was lost, so much that was deliberately destroyed. But what remains is enough. Enough to prove the myths wrong, enough to reclaim the truth, enough to begin rewriting the story.
Africa was not a dark continent waiting for light. It was a beacon, a birthplace, a center of human achievement. The first humans walked on African soil. The first tools were made by African hands. The first art was created by African minds. And for thousands of years after, African civilizations rose and flourished. They built, they created, they innovated, they traded, they learned, they taught. They were not perfect. No civilization is. They had conflicts and failures. They made mistakes. They were human. But they were not primitive. They were not backward. They were not waiting to be saved. They were builders of pyramids and palaces, creators of art and literature, masters of metal and mathematics, navigators of deserts and oceans, teachers and traders and warriors and kings. This is the truth that was hidden. This is the history that was stolen. This is the story that must be told. Not to replace one myth with another, not to claim superiority or perfection, but simply to restore balance, to give Africa its rightful place in human history, to acknowledge what was always true but deliberately ignored. The lies are crumbling, the truth is rising, and with it rises a new understanding of who we are and where we came from. All of us, the entire human family. Because Africa's story is not separate from the world's story. It is the beginning of it. And understanding that beginning changes everything. The myths are dead. Long live the truth.